Hey, what's up everyone? This is Jake from TrndsttrsMedia. I'm here with Amanda Johansson, our head of social media here, who's done a few things on TikTok. So we wanted to share some insight on what we might call a new series called Talk the Talk. I don't know, we'll see. It's an awful pun made by yours truly. So one of the first questions I always get, Amanda, from large brands as well as individuals is how to get started creating on TikTok. And myself, I can attest to this because I probably spent like 6 months just watching it and couldn't figure out like what can I actually do and how do I do that. So what's your advice to brands or individual for actually like starting to post stuff on TikTok?
Well, to get started, you have to obviously just like watch a ton of it and get like used to the content and the creating of it. But like just keeping up with trends, filters, hashtags, also like the dances or the acting or anything that TikTok holds, if you just keep up with that and also stay consistent. That is my number one thing, like constantly posting, because TikTok is a platform where you can post all the time and it does not matter. So
consistency, frequency, and then most importantly, staying up to date with the trends. I know we talk about that here on LinkedIn a lot. As well as all platforms, you need to not just know your end consumers, but you also need to know the platform and staying up to date with the lingo. And I think TikTok's probably the most vital for that because there's always some new trend. And if you miss that trend window by even a week, it's already lame. Mm-hmm. So that's how these kids, Gen Z folk, roll. So then the question is, let's say, I'm a larger brand and I start posting on the platform and I'm starting to build up an audience. How do I maintain and manage that audience? Of which might be a little bit more difficult than say Instagram, where it's a little bit easier just to respond to a comment, respond to DMs. Like, how do you stay up to date with that on TikTok?
Well, obvious, same answer, keeping up the trends, but actually when you have somewhat of a following, it's really good to actually create your own content, because now those people that have been following you for a while want to know what you personally do and what you've been up to. So then they're gonna like kind of catch on to that, and then maybe your own things will become a trend. So you want to start doing and branching off to your own things.
And so for those that don't know, what Amanda's referencing is instead of just creating content that's like the trend stuff on TikTok, it's to actually start creating your own trends. And so if you're a brand, rather than just doing those consistent trends, why not go ahead and make your own? Which should make for an interesting conversation over the next few years with sonic branding, the branding of audio. If you think about some of the most iconic brands in the world, they all have those little jingles and rhymes that go with them. So how can they layer that into their TikTok content? We've already seen this with music artists having, plenty of success, even, coming up out of nowhere, as well as cross-promoting their music onto the platform. So it'll be interesting to see that. Now, when it comes to converting that audience to other platforms, so TikTok we know is the best platform right now to build a following. How do you then convert your followers on TikTok to, say, Instagram or YouTube?
It's actually super difficult. It's hard to direct people to another form of you, because I'm sure that TikTok's going to be completely different than your Instagram just by the formatting and whatever you're posting. But it's funny because I've found that since TikTok is obviously videos, people are drawn to go follow me on something like YouTube because they know they're going to get the same video content. Yeah. But Instagram is so hard to build up. That's probably, if I were going to say like the hardest thing to build up from another following is Instagram. So
yeah, that makes sense. And obviously right now across the board, growing on Instagram is probably the most difficult it's ever been. Mm-hmm. It was crazy because even like 2 years ago it seemed like it was just so much easier, and now today it seems like almost impossible without like influencer promos and ads and so on. But it's a much bigger problem, and so pretty much my takeaway there is siphoning the audience to another platform is not nearly as easy as it sounds. You got to get creative, you got to actually think about it. So another question I have for you regarding TikTok, I know you've obviously worked with a lot of brands personally through, as an influencer. You've worked with a lot of client brands, with us. What is something that you've seen that brands have done poor or what are some very cringy common mistakes that might happen with brands where you can very clearly tell that a 45-year-old creative director probably made this trying to reach like a 16-year-old?
Yeah. No matter, honestly, what following you have, once you hit, I'm going to say, I don't know, maybe a couple thousand, you're going to be reached out by brands and you will be promised a whole new world every time. That's just their number one thing. Oh, we will get you to the point where you can move to LA, or we'll make you your own hype house. Believe me, I have been actually like given these things. And so you always need to go back and do a background check, research them, get to know the person, and you see if it's even real. But that's probably the number one poorest thing about people reaching out to you. Is the fake stuff. But also, something that's really done poorly with brands and influencers is that influencers have a lot of time to create. Obviously, that's their job, but they have you on such a strict time management, which I think needs to be fixed. Because I mean, I work with brands and like, okay, you have to post a Monday 4 times a day, and I need them at this time, so you need to send me the links, and then after that, I will approve them, and then blah blah blah. I mean, it's a list of things. So if you like, something that would fix is like just being lenient with your creators. Yeah,
and you know, there's a lot of brands right now that are either directly doing influencer outreach or likely working through an agency. So it's vital, and we've done a unique job of this, I would say, to not make that transactional. Because here's the reality. Your brand is right here. You have integrity, you have authority. Likely you have a purpose, right? And you have a brand standard you want to attain. Then you hire an agency. An agency's KPIs are based on X, Y, and Z. Guess what they're not based on? Your brand integrity and impressions. So you demand that they get you 100 influencers. That gets passed to the project manager. The project manager hands that to the head of influencer marketing outreach. Then the head of influencer marketing outreach answers to the project manager. So guess what the head of influencer marketing cares about? Not the influencers. They only care about getting them signed up, hitting the quota, and maintaining the contract, because that's where they make money. So the problem lies in where the incentives are aligned. So what we've actually been trying to work on internally and finalizing some things is like, how do we create like influencer groups and communities for specific brands to then work together? And how do we do a much better job consulting where we can work together on what the creative needs to be, when we should post and why, what we should post, and then also how do we give the influencers actual creative authority to create what they want to create, because then it's actually going to be authentic, then the impression is actually going to matter. And something that I always say, whether it's with influencer marketing or paid ads, is the impact of the impression matters much more than the impression itself. So, and I know that's something we've talked about a lot, is how like the influencer brand relationships have just been so transactional. So it creates a lot of problems in the market, and that will always get back to your brand, because I'm sure you've been outreached by a particular brand, and while it may have not been Adidas directly reaching out to you or whatever brand name it is, you know, now you're going to have a negative stigma towards that brand and likely not purchase their products.
Oh yeah, there's definitely been times where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my favorite brand ever, and I'm going to get to like work with them, and I do not buy a single thing from them. Like, you nailed it straight on. Like, I don't support them because they look at us influencers as if we're just a big money pot.
Correct.
And we're also people and also have a brand that we like promote. So they need to like work brand to brand, not just like, oh, throw it at them and they'll promote us.
Yeah, I think that's something that's always forgotten. I always harp on the importance and potential within influencer marketing. Yet I always talk about how it's never done well, and I think that's because it is transactional. If you're expecting this to be like paid ads where you just put $1,000 in and then it magically gets you impressions and views and conversions over here, that's just not the case. There's a lot more management that goes into it, but that shouldn't stray you away, because the impact of it, if you do it correctly, is so much better. And we've seen that done well time and time again. So I think we'll echo the message again, not just from myself with somewhat of a biased opinion, but from actual influencers, that this is a problem, we need to fix this. So if you're currently working with agencies or you currently have influencer relationships, I think it is vital that you audit those relationships and ensure that your brand has a positive message in your content and promotions through influencers.
Okay, so to reverse the roles from influencer to a business,
Yes.
what does an influencer need to do in order to get the attention of a business in order to work together?
Yeah, good question. So first, I would say a lot of influencers need to drop the ego from the gate. And the problem is there's like just a negative stigma from both perspectives. So like agencies think they're going to get burned by influencers. Influencers think they're going to get burned. So, but understand from an influencer perspective that the agencies and the brands are going to end up choosing who gets these deals. So I would just find a way of like, how can I just go befriend and start working and even helping like a particular agency that does a lot within influencer marketing. And then from there, I try to create the most leverage possible and transition my particular role to be less about who I am like demographic wise and the content I create, and more about like my ability to consult. So look, and this is something Amanda and I talk about a lot, like one day, if you're an influencer, you know, unless you're like Logan Paul or unless you're like, you know, a very top level influencer, this is going to go away at some point in the near future, you know, especially if you're relying on like looks or like your athletic ability or like some of these things that just simply aren't going to last, but also the social media platforms themselves aren't going to last. So what's important to note there is that I'd be thinking about how you can diversify your value. So be thinking about how, you know, hey, let's say I have 1 million followers right now. How can I increase my value to not just be about 1 million followers, but about how my campaigns convert the best because I have this unique way of approaching it that hits really good with my audience. And then I'd be thinking about like how I can take on test clients that fit my, you know, fit my end audience. So let's say I talk about veganism all the time. Well, let me go specifically target vegan products that I use, tell them I'll do it for free just to create a case study. And then on that case study, I'd be like, hey, I ran ads for this company. They paid me this much money. Say that they paid you money, but even if they didn't, say that they paid you money, whatever, take that as a case study and be like, look, they paid me $1,000 and I made them $10,000. If you take that to any agency or any business, they're gonna sign off on that right away. And then you can increase your price. So that's what I would do, is like understand that the only reason you're gonna be getting paid by an agency or business is for those actual conversions. And if you can show that you can convert better than other influencers, they're gonna go to you every time.